might help. Is this better?
Yeah.
Okay, super. So I was just saying that this is a group of people now that I am talking to who have done products in the food space and who have already gotten to a certain distance with those products. And now it's a question of how to best ramp up, how to possibly get offline or online distribution better effective, how to raise funds. So I would request one of you to take charge perhaps. Has everyone joined from the second group? If we can just do a quick roll call, if that helps. Yeah, so I have the list from, so there is Arihant, there is Harsha. Arihant, you're there, I saw you. Anindita, there yet? Okay. So how about we start with who I know is already here, which is Arihant. You want to take a quick minute to introduce yourself, Satviko, and what you'd possibly want to ask the group here?
Okay. Hi, hello everybody. Thanks, Ankur. Good to see you as well here. And my name is Arihant, and I am an engineering graduate and passed out from IIM in 2008-9 from the 8-9 batch. And currently, I am engaged in building the business network for Satviko across the globe, primarily looking in the for India, for Southeast Asia, Middle East regions. And at Satviko, we intend to solve these modern day health problems like hypertension, diabetes, lack of immunity, etc. Through the ancient wisdom of Indian superfoods, which have been presented in contemporary formats to people. So we have products like roasted makhana, gur chana, sabudana super meal, raisin super fruits, super candy, etc. So these are all lifestyle products which we intend to go into the market. So currently we have a retail presence in 30 cities in India and in 5 countries now, majorly in the US and Canada. And so now we are looking to rapidly expand our export market segment, wherein we realize that that is where the right customer segment is. So my question would be, my key takeaway or maybe inputs would really help from everybody. How can we scale up the export market for the product that we are what we are doing? Thank you.
Sure. So we'll try and address that through one of the counselors. Meanwhile, Mr. Arun, would you like to go next on your introduction? We can't hear you, sir.
Yeah. Hi. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. Hi. Good evening. My name is Arun Nagpal, and I represent a social enterprise called Mrida. I passed out from IMC way back in 1985, so I'm part of the 20th batch, so ancient vintage in that sense. So, just to give you a perspective, so Mrida is actually Sanskrit for soil, and it's a social enterprise that I co-founded about 6 years ago. The whole objective of Mrida is how we can build business models that can uplift lives at the bottom of the pyramid in rural India. So we essentially work, in remote villages, trying to see how we could facilitate holistic rural development in different parts of India. And coming to the foods part of the business, I mean, there are other revenue streams, but what I'd like to discuss is as far as the foods part of the business is concerned. So we work in small and marginal farmers in these remote villages, working primarily on, again, ancient healthy grains, as Arihant mentioned. So focusing on millets and amaranth. And, one of the things that we've seen is, farmers typically know what to cultivate. They know how to cultivate. What they lack is the ability to value add to their process so that they can increase their income levels. And the other part that they really lack is the market linkages. So what we're trying to do is kind of help them in both these areas. So we support farmers and people in villages, and not only just the cultivation, but the processing of those grains, whether it's gradation, whether it's value addition, whether it's conversion into attas, etc. And what we've done from our point of view is that we've created this FMCG range called Earthspired. So, like I said, Mrida is Sanskrit for soil. So we've created this range called Earthspired, inspired by the earth. We've got a range of healthy millet and amaranth-based multigrain flours. We've got a range of gluten-free amaranth and millet-based cookies. We've got some ready-to-eat amaranth-based snacks, a sweet and a salted version. And we've got a range of ready-to-cook products like upma and khichdi, which are again millet-based. Right, so that's something that we started about 3 years ago. So relatively, this part of the business is something new. So far, we've been selling primarily through the online channel. So we've been selling through Big Basket, Amazon, and through our own website. Of course, in fairly limited quantities because it takes time and to invest in building a brand. So that's something that we've been doing so far. In terms of challenges and what I'm looking for, as some takeaways from this session or inputs or possible, tie-ups or, synergies with people present here are essentially two areas: how we can kind of build further on our online presence. B, how can we get into organized retail? That's something that we've not done. I mean, we're still self-funded as an organization. So, how can we look at funding and entry into the retail segment? And the last part, which I think is also pretty important, is we're trying to see now, apart from doing this in our own brand, because we've pretty much got the value chain, we've got the product, all that is pretty much in place. We're trying to see how we could tie up in terms of private label, or we could tie up with somebody else so that we could provide them with bulk quantities to be sold in their own respective brands. So I would say these are the areas that I'm looking for some inputs from the team here. Thanks.
Super. Thanks for that. I just took some quick notes, so I'll pick them up again once the introductions are done. So meanwhile, Harsha, do you want to go next?
Hi, this is Harsh. Thanks everyone for the opportunity. I'm from the 46 batch of IMC. My startup is called Little Goodness. We are a kids food and nutrition brand. We went live just at the beginning of COVID. We went live in February 2020, March 2020. And coming out of COVID, or in the past 9 months, we have scaled our business from zero to almost single-digit crore kind of revenue run rate. We scaled our presence from zero to around 280 offline outlets. And on Amazon, we went from to best sellers, the top 50 in two categories. Our own background, me and my co-founder Pariksha, we both come from healthcare. I co-founded a startup called, a large startup called Tata Health, which has scaled to around $10 million. And the insights gained from working in healthcare kind of led me to believe that what you eat at a very early stage of your life makes a huge difference to the future growth and development of children. And that's how both me and Pariksha got started on Little Goodness. Apart from Little Goodness, we also run a small fresh food business called School Meal, which used to supply fresh meals to school kids in Bangalore. Unfortunately, that business is kind of now shut, but that used to do around 2,000 meals a day before COVID struck. And we have a very simple value proposition, a very simple problem statement that we're trying to solve. That in India, there are three major deficiencies which lead to nutrition deficiencies in kids: iron, vitamins B12, D3, and the third one is protein. And we have excess of bad carbohydrates and fats, which is essentially sugars and trans fats. So as a kids food and nutrition focused startup, what we're trying to do is bring the goodness into foods in the first three categories and reduce the bad in foods. Our snacks include the likes of vegetable-based crackers. We've launched India's first pre-bake chocolates, which is doing really well on Amazon and in offline channels. And soon we are launching, interestingly, Arun sir, we are working on a superfood grain, which is very new to India, called teff. We're launching a range of foods using teff as a key ingredient in the market. I would love to use the opportunity to understand from everyone as to how to scale online, your previous experiences of scaling online. And second is, in the case of chocolates, where we've already kind of discovered a product market fit, some guidance on how to scale up geographically and scale up smart. We're already present in 3 cities, because now the challenge is how to scale it up in the right direction, in the right geographies, because we are a seed-funded startup, we need to be extremely frugal, at the same time aggressive with our capital.
Super. Thanks for that. Next, we move over to Siddhartha.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Siddharth. I run a company called Smoothies. My co-founder is also from IMCAL. We both graduated in 2014, and essentially our product is 100% fruit smoothie, so no sugar, no preservative, none of that. We've since diversified a little more into juices, but largely kept to the beverages space. Overall, the concept revolves around fruits being healthy and key to a better immunity overall. And we've been pushing uh, a convenient solution for that, as we, at least from our personal experiences, we've seen a lot of busy working professionals not really doing that much of fruit consumption in their day-to-day diets. Right. We've been COVID hit us at a bad time while we were scaling, and um, what we've done significantly after that is that we've seen a big jump specifically in e-commerce. So scaling e-commerce has been a journey that we've had to learn pretty quickly. Direct to consumer is also something that really kicked in for us during lockdown. So that was an interesting thing. I wanted to try to understand what some of the other brands here are thinking of or doing, or trying, or is there some way to figure out that? And the other thing is, so we're currently present in 2 cities with physical presence, and we've been looking to scale to more cities as we go ahead. We're doing that with a few marquee clients, but again, just wanted to understand thoughts on how to scale up distribution, something similar to what Harsha said, wherein you can like how to do it more cost effectively, especially at an earlier stage where not that many distributors really engage or talk to you or manage the service levels which you do to grow a market. So that's something that I'd like to, if we could get some light on that from the panel.
Sure. So offline distribution geography seems to be a common area of interest. Mr. Ramchandran, would you want to go next? You're still on mute, sir.
Is it okay? So audible?
Yes.
I am also an IMCN, more ancient than Arun, and I was with IMC as a faculty also till 2000, and I became an entrepreneur by choice, basically to spend my evening of my life. And I am in an industry which is the second largest globally traded commodity. And even though it is the second largest globally traded commodity, which actually signifies its demand, the actual farmer doesn't make much money in this industry. Farmer gets about 80 cents for a pack of coffee, which is sold at $8. So that is the economics of this industry. So in this, what I have started trying to do is to reach out to the customer directly. If we can do that, the 80 cents could be doubled. In my case, of course, I am not looking at from a commercial point of view substantially. As my son puts it, this is the way Dad tried to spend this money. So whatever it may be, I actually would like to see that the actual farm laborers who are very poorly paid in this industry gets a little more. Now I try to pay them 20% more than the surroundings, but even that is taxing considering the market. The how to reach the end customer is the basic problem which I have faced. The process of distributing this logistics part could be taken care of. What we do is that we pack it and send it by India Post. During COVID times, we had some dislocations. Arun was one of the recipients of that dislocation. Barring that, generally, customers have well received it. But how to reach the customers? Because my total volume may be something around 500,000, 500,000 cups of coffee, right? Which in real quantity terms will turn out to be 3 to 4 tons of roast coffee beans. But I'm enjoying that, even though I'm not making much money. Rather, I'm spending a lot of money. But how to reach to the direct customer? Because it is very interesting to say that farm to kitchen. But reaching the kitchen part of it is extremely difficult. Even when the logistics part can be taken care of, because I have found that India Post in normal times could reach anywhere in India in 10 to 14 days time. But that reaching out to the people who want that is the main issue I have faced. So, thank you.
All right. So we have Mr. Vigyan, who's from the dairy industry, could probably go next.
Hello everyone, I am 37 batch. I am Calcutta, passed out in 2002. So I guess somewhere smack in the middle of Arun and Siddharth. I moved into rural India in 2006 after leaving banking, my active banking career. My background before I am as engineering, IT. And since last 14 years, we have tried multiple things. We've been into KPO, BPO, we did organic farming, we've done vermicomposting. And all these things are done as experiments. It's not that we went into something and got out of it something. It's something while we were trying to find out what we want to do. And as Ramachandran sir said, I think the basic objective for me to leave for rural India was philanthropic in a way. I wanted to make sure that farmers get richer, but definitely not like an NGO, because somehow I always had this idea that you should be sustainable and actually profit-making company. That's when you can really create a bigger impact. So the approach has been that we were blessed with the first round of funding by City Venture Capital in 2014. I'm sorry, because I started my dairy in 2012. And in 2014, I got my funding from City Venture Capital for a small sum of about $1 million. Small sum because usually at that time and even today, people want to invest much larger numbers in dairy, saying put up a big processing plant and everything. And these were the only ones who were agreeing to the idea which I had, that start small. Because the biggest problem we are plagued with right now is our distribution network is so widespread. Or dairy farming is the most fragmented production system, I'd say, within the agricultural commodity. Because every farmer is producing on an average 10 liters of milk. Even agriculture wise, they do better. So a 10 liters of milk farmer, and they are to be collated on a daily basis twice a day. And then we are creating mega plants next to city. So we end up being, I think it's basically going against the economics of doing the right thing. And because of some of these factors, quality went for a toss. So it took us 4.5 years, 5 years in fact, to prove the model. A very, very difficult journey. We are sitting on some losses right now.
Mr. Vigyan, so sorry. We only have an hour for the whole conversation. So I'd really welcome if you could get to the questions and the challenges that you'd love to address from part of this group.
So now we've done the learning. We've been there. We've understood a lot of problems which are being solved. We are on a cash basis break even now. So the next round, what we are looking at is one is of course funding. And the primary reason for funding is to get the right kind of resources, management resources in place, get some possible fellow IMCians also to come and join us in the rural journey. So we can afford some of them, we can do some scale ups in terms of market expansion. We still have some spare capacity to do that. So these are the two things we're looking for. Some entrepreneurs to join us on board full time, and of course the next round of funding.
Yep. Superb. Thank you so much. So we have one more entrepreneur on the same thread, and it's Anuj. Can you please quickly introduce yourself?
Can you hear me?
We can.
Yeah, hi. So I'm Anuj Kapoor. I'm from the 36th batch. I'm not sure if I qualify really as a food entrepreneur, but my background is in investments and in the role of internet-powered technologies, what they can do for socioeconomic advancement of different communities, um, including obviously the agricultural community. With that in mind, I set up a social startup in Himachal, where I'm from, called Five Benches, and we have run different projects with different rural communities. A couple of them are in the agri space. The one product that has come out of that, which will be relevant for this discussion, is called Himachali Chuk. It is a hot sauce chili preparation. It's a traditional product from that community. What we've done really briefly is to find product that exists already. This is not farm produce. It's actually obviously processed food in the form of pickle or hot sauce and so on, and try to create a digital identity for these specific products, which are whether agri or otherwise. We've had some success. I think we've expanded quite well digitally. We're doing really, really well. We managed to get this traditional product listed on Wikipedia. Like you have sriracha, and now everyone talks about piri piri sauce, Tabasco, and so on. Now you'll find chuk from Chamba Valley also listed there on Wikipedia and so on. We're Amazon Prime, and we've done some exports. We won a few contracts through the Latin American markets and so on. But it isn't a business of scale. My involvement was as an investor. I put my money in there and teamed up with a couple of people who are on ground in Himachal to do this. So I'm not the only one, running this show. I'm, in fact, only sort of 50% probably allocated to that business, really. In terms of, I think a lot of good questions have already been asked. I think what Arun said right at the beginning kind of sums pretty much up what everyone might be asking. So I will not repeat any questions. One thing I will say is what we've done that I'm trying to do with our business is give more ownership of the brand and the product to the communities that make the product itself. And that's been hard because the villagers and the makers, the self-help groups that we work with, they typically want income. They're not interested in getting shares and equity, and they don't even understand that sort of game. So what I'm trying to do is over time, initially pay them obviously salaries for the work that they do, or buy produce off them so that they're compensated from day one. But now I'm trying to pivot to a model where we give them more equity. So we've kind of going to, as the volumes grow, we'll probably shift to a model of sort of 70% cash and 30% equity, or whatever arrangement works. So that's an idea that I have come up with, and I think that's quite interesting for people who actually want to give ownership to the villages and to the growers themselves, because they don't really understand this whole equity and valuation game and so on. So before you get to the valuation stage, it might be worth giving direct equity to the ground level people who are working with you. I'll stop with that. Thanks.
Thank you so much. So, now we move to the counselors. We have 4 of them here. Please quickly introduce yourselves, so maybe then I can pick up some specific questions that have been asked all this while, and the most appropriate person is welcome to take that. Suhas, you want to take it first? Suhas, you're still on mute. Sorry.
Yeah, hi, I'm Suhas. I'm from the 38th batch, and I'm these days building out a brand called Misters.in, which is focused on men's sexual health and wellness. I guess why ASU wanted me on this panel is for my previous venture. So I co-founded Hector Beverages, which is the company behind Paperboat. I exited that. We started the company in 2009. I exited in 2015. And anyway, so we'll talk more about that when a question comes up specific. I've worked on distribution and marketing and all this general startup stuff like raising money, etc. So I can feel probably some questions around that. I don't think I'll have very definitive answers, but happy to give it a go.
Great, thank you for that. We have Abhishek, who's coming from the investment side. So please, Abhishek, your introduction.
Yeah, hi, my name is Abhishek Sharman. I'm from the 40th batch. Along with a couple of my partners, run a fund called Carpedium Capital. We are a private equity fund. We manage about $50 million, and we invest behind consumer brands and organized services. Food and agri is an area of focus where we made some investments. We are typically a first institutional investor in most of our companies. So happy to give my views on anything related to funding. I mean, as a private equity guy, you're a general expert, so you can give views on anything. But I think the key area of I think some experience is around at what stage, what kind of investors would like to invest, and what are they looking for, and so on and so forth. So happy to give my inputs on any of those matters.
Sure, thank you. Kunal, you want to take next?
Yeah, hi everyone. So just quickly introducing, I'm from the batch of 2012, I think 47th batch. And I'm currently working with a company called Pity Group. We are primarily into sales and distribution of various products. So the claim to fame for the company is that we took Patanjali as a brand into modern trade. So did sales and distribution for this. I was not a part of it, but the company was. I have recently joined this company where we have partnered with international brands for an FMCG company called Church and Dwight, for whom we'll be doing the complete sales, distribution, marketing across various product categories. So beauty, personal care, wellness, home care, fabric care, whatnot. Anyways, the expertise of the companies is in sales and distribution across various channels. So, be it e-commerce, in offline, it's general trade and modern trade, because we have a couple of our own in-house brands as well, and we're doing a lot of that. We also provide, warehousing management solutions and transport management solutions. We have almost 18 plus warehouses across the country with 500,000 square feet of space and almost 500 vehicles on our on our roll to service our various clients. So that's it from me for now.
Great. So I think Kalyan is not here from what I see. Kalyan, if you're here, please let me know. Else, Kunal, maybe you can continue with respect to the biggest question that has been asked is with respect to geographical expansion and distribution. So I'm not sure if Pity Group does it for smaller brands, emerging brands. You can probably tell us as to what kind of companies you typically work with at Pity, and what would be the right ways to go about for companies which are in this group like Satviko, Smoothies, Sahaj, perhaps they need distribution, but the coffee folks perhaps could use with some offline work, and so could Mr. Nagpal. So would welcome your thoughts on scaling up distribution geographically.
Yeah, so actually, we are already in talks with Arihant and Satviko, primarily for the export space. So, we have a separate team for that who's already in touch with Arihant. But yeah, in terms of other companies who we are working with, there's one company called Granary Chips. I'm sure you heard of it. There's one called Kettle Farms. Also, we do the distribution for them. There's one separate category, but polycabs, the wires and cables, we do sales and distribution for them. There is another regional food company called Chajed Foods out of Telangana. So we've kind of tied up with them for sales and distribution across Telangana and gradually expanded across India. Besides these, we are doing distribution for some of your celebrity brands like a Virat Kohli's 1-8, a Salman Khan's Fresh Sanitizer, Laya Datta's fragrance brand. So these, they want us to start off with the e-com space now. They only want us to do the distribution, not the sales, to the e-com partners. So be it an Nykaa, Amazon, and whatnot. And then I guess at some point of time they want to expand offline also. But then again, these are all separate teams that take care of these aspects. I personally take care of, like I mentioned earlier, the Church and Dwight business portfolio. So the complete sales and distribution and marketing for that sector. But
so would it be fair to say that the people from this group are welcome to reach out to Pity as a biz dev conversation, because you seem to have a solution to several people's problems around distribution, right?
Yeah.
And do you do cold chain?
No, we don't do cold chain, not yet.
You don't do cold chain. The Smoothies might need to wait. Okay. So Has, you've done some amount of work on stepping up distribution for Hector, and
right.
Be very welcome to see what's the right way, because India is such a huge market and such a huge opportunity, but new brands mostly struggle to set up distribution. So would love to know what is the day zero.
I think for us, what worked is that while we had a very strong distribution background, because both Neeraj and I, who started the company, worked at Coca-Cola, and it is a fairly intense distribution story. But my big learning from building hectare distribution, especially in the early days when the brand is weaker, so that's the classic challenge, right? There's not enough pull for your products. So something has to break the chicken and egg. And very often what happens is when you're looking at your maths of distribution, you're looking at all your distribution costs as variable costs, right? So hurting your gross margin one way or the other. But the thing to build distribution that worked for us was that we separated it into saying, okay, these small volumes, this is our standard cycle, and how can we make it exciting enough for distribution? Like, while it is important to build, that is not where you win the business. Like this kind of business, you win it on the brand. So we said, okay, we will support it with these minimum guarantees, etc. So if we accounted for all our payouts to distribution at an early stage, it would be a very inefficient model. But if we didn't do it, we would be stuck in the chicken and egg, where if you go to a distributor, even for a small brand or a set of small brands, they will say, what if this doesn't sell? And everything becomes that much duller in the conversation. So the first 30-40 distributors got great deals from us in terms of making sure that they get a very good return. And I think after that, you come to a point where you start optimizing it. So I think while trying to solve distribution, the important thing is to say that that's not where you'll win the game. You'll still win the game as a brand, because fundamentally India is an underbranded country, and what you're trying to do is build a brand there. So distribution is important, but it won't win it for you. So throw some money at the problem would be my advice, and make it such that the first 15, 20, over whatever number that you feel that you've developed a thesis and you've started going and a business cycle is in place, that person is happy. Like, that person is happy servicing your outlets. You are working on pre-orders, etc. So there's only one way you can work with distributors early on. When you don't have enough demand, you take care of getting those orders in. And so it's an inefficient system, but you can migrate to an efficient system only after you've been through that journey and you have some real numbers. So you end up losing a lot of money on distribution early on, but lose it at a small scale. See whether you can make the model work with a lot of hard work. And then you will find ways to scale, because there are lots of people doing all kinds of things in distribution. So I think throwing money at the problem at a scale you can afford, figuring out how your numbers hold, what's the maths, what's the spend on various things in distribution. But don't think of it as the make or break thing. Like, that is a mistake one tends to make, because you can make the product available in a lot of places, but what you are really chasing is a thesis with which people pick it up. Once people start picking it up or asking for it, all your distribution problems get solved. So at a small scale, throw money for the problem, build a thesis would be my advice if you are at an early stage trying to figure it out. If you have crossed that stage, then it shouldn't be a problem. Then basically just hire some people in distribution, and it's a fairly standard, thing to figure out. So that would be my advice. Slightly counterintuitive. Early on, throw money. Don't worry about whether you're burning money in distribution. If people are picking up your product, if your unit economics otherwise are good, everything else will get figured out later.
Anything on go deep within a city before go wide across cities?
Absolutely, go deep as possible. Like, our biggest mistake, and this one is a very painful bit of learning, like early on, because we used to love distribution and say what's our width of distribution, etc. So suddenly we realized that we are now present in like 20,000 outlets in 45 cities, and we haven't even figured out how well the product moves. And we had to ramp down, and it was painful. And also it was not the best use of capital. But the thing is, a lot of joy comes from seeing your product in a number of places. So entrepreneurs' vanity sort of makes you drive things widthwise. And at least for us, like as a beverage business, that is true. In my current business, that is not true, because we are in a stigmatized category. Everything has to be sold discreetly. But there, seeing your product chilled somewhere, seeing danglers and bun things, that was such joy. So we ended up having a distribution we didn't really need straight away. And we had to actually scale down after the first year of distribution to say we are distributing too much. Because once you figure it out, then you can start distributing and it's easy. But the key thing is at a small width, high depth, see if it's working. If it works in 5 places and you are confident of it, you're feeling the maths, then there is nothing that stops you from expanding distribution. Like basically hiring at the most, not the most expensive resources you can build distribution in Maharashtra, for example, if you have your thesis for a total additional SG&A of 3 lakh rupees, right? So it's not the biggest problem to say, how do I start the next state? So width is not a problem. You should know whether your maths is holding at a small unit which you can see. Ideally, at a very early stage, you should be able to literally see it, like go every day and see it. Throwing money at don't worry about, how is distribution hurting your unit economics, because if the demand side is there, all of this can get sorted.
Sure. So because a lot of people, I mean, like the millets the kind of food he's trying to create is a category where distribution will always remain challenging, because those people are used to commodity products, the distributors, and they would always struggle to carry new stuff. So you're saying that just bribe them initially to get them to carry it. Once you've got your consumer demand sorted, that might just be able to take the channel part sorted. Great.
Correct.
Thank you.
Don't bribe the retailer, bribe the distributor is what I'm saying. Because if you do the retailer, yeah.
But what's with not bribing the retailer? A lot of people do tend to offer those schemes, right?
It can skew your perception of what is happening, right? Like the retailer might be, if the retailer is basically if the retailer is doing something outlier in terms of getting the customer to buy, that won't get replicated. But the distributor, you will find some other distributor or some other type of distributor. And so if you create a super normal situation in your payout to distributors, it won't hurt your business, because eventually the distributor can't convince a consumer to say, in my case, drink it, or in somebody else's case, eat something. The retailer can. He might say, okay, I'm making so much money off this. This customer comes to me regularly. Suppose that person is giving it away or something. Like, just control that the demand thing is not being distorted. You have a demand story, like how that person is buying from the retail point. So do not to create anything there which you can't scale up, but do things at distributors which you cannot scale up, just to see whether the overall equation is holding, and then your maths will emerge.
Okay. So Abhishek, before we get to the funding conversation, I'd love to have your inputs basis your understanding of consumer brands and the way they've been built. If you can throw some light on how distribution, you've seen the best guys do the job at the early days compared to what our brands here are.
So I think nowadays at the early stage, we are seeing a lot of online focus. I think the first place to launch for most businesses now seems to be Amazon, and it's a lot about performance marketing. Become work in terms of what you can do on Amazon to make your product listing go higher, and so on and so forth. I think the whole aspect of distribution or creating channel brands is something which is losing its sheen. Is my feeling nowadays, because I think for most people it works only at scale. The one part of this whole game, I think, which people underplay is using B2B and then going to B2C. I really believe that initially one of the best things that you can do when you're a young company is to get into a contract with a good business. It gives you eyeballs. It may not give you a lot of cash, because you will negotiate a generally good deal, but it allows you to get your manufacturing in order, get your supply chain in order, because when you're dealing with bulk or when you're dealing with quantities, a lot of that gets tested and streamlined, unfortunately, what's happening is that there seems to be a lot of focus on B2C brand. People think that if you go B2B, then B2C might get impacted in some shape or form, or you might get less evaluation, or B2B brand cannot be a good B2C brand, and so on and so forth. I think that's something which is quite underplayed, because if you really want to build a profitable business, and if you do not have access to funding initially, it becomes very difficult to go to these online platforms and do marketing at any reasonable scale. There's a limited amount of money that you can burn. I've seen few instances, but the other angle that people can look at is thinking about initially getting into an interesting B2B deal if they can swing it, because that I think can be very, very useful in the initial days.
So, given what you started with saying that it may not be a great idea to attempt too much offline, what do you think is the right stage for a brand which has made some sort of a progress on Amazon and their own website to start looking at offline? At what revenue stage or company life stage should they attempt it, or should they just park it for a longer period?
So I think once you are seeing some traction, and it actually depends upon which category you are and
You could
what
take an
is
example,
the.
let's say, from Satseko, right? The good chana, the superfoods.
I think, frankly speaking, once you start doing 30, 40, 50 lakhs a month, I think you could start your preliminary conversation offline. You can be geography focused. You don't need to stretch yourself too wide. And I think there's no right number, but I think that the key thing that you have to think about is whenever you're ready to move from a centralized inventory model to a distributed inventory model. Initially, you might have to do things on a consignment basis. Are you okay with that? Because I think it is very important to see the terms of the trade right. Initial traction on Amazon, the way it will help you is that when you go and talk to a distributor, it will be a shorter conversation. Secondly, you could talk about doing business not on a consignment basis but on an outright basis. And thirdly, I think you have to be selective. For example, certain product you only want to target the sort of A plus retailers. For certain products, you have a larger mass market. So I think once you see some initial tractions, you've got great Amazon reviews. I mean, if you put a gun to my head, maybe 30, 40, 50 lakhs a month. I think at that point,
would you also map to the getting to the funding side of things? Now, people have different stages at which it makes sense for them to raise money and also to deploy it. But would you, let's say, be able to map a journey of a brand when they've raised money? So when should you raise? How much to raise? Where to deploy it in the initial period? Because you might just spend a whole lot of money offline and not make your mark, which might have been easier to make online. Would be great if you can throw some light on this.
So again, money for brands. I mean, if you look at a food agri sector, if I look at that as the entire gamut, then I would say that the three kinds of investors. One is what I called the venture consumer investors. Which is people like, let's say, DSG. People like Fireside Ventures. And so on and so forth. I think in these, as far as these guys are concerned, it is better to go with an initial traction idea because they have a program where they invest a certain amount of money. Like one of them invests some 2.85 crores every startup or something of that nature. So they have many of these guys have this cookie cutter approach. Sequoia, Surge, where they basically cast their net wide. The point is that if there's something promising, then why not sort of get my fangs into it quickly, if I may use those words. So in these cases, I would say once you have the story right, you have the product in place, you're doing the first 20, 30, 40 lakhs of sales a month on Amazon. I think at that point of time, you can go and have a conversation with some of these guys. So and it also depends on how quickly you want to get money in. I mean, that's also entrepreneur preference. I've seen people who say that I have a certain amount of money in my bank. I want to take it to a certain level before I take external money. But if you're targeting money quickly, these are pools of capital that are useful. For some ventures where you have a social angle as well, there are a lot of impact funds. For example, there is on the agri side is Omnivore. There are a few others who basically like things where you have your impact angle as well. With these guys again, you can go fairly quickly. Once the product is ready, you have some initial customers.
Quite a few of our entrepreneurs here are making some sort of impact. So maybe you guys want to ask any more specific questions. It would be helpful, Abhishek, if you can also specify a bit more about what Carpe Diem does specifically as a sector.
Yeah, which is the third category I was coming to, which is the what we call consumer early private equity funds. So people like, let's say, us, people like 6 Cents. So we look at companies once they start doing about 2 crores a month. So our threshold of companies is about anywhere in 25 to 175 crores in terms of revenues. We like to see some sustainability. We are what we call an early growth fund. And for us, the key is that we don't necessarily need to come in very, very quickly. But what we like is that the company has done hard yards in terms of getting to some sort of sustainability stage established, and then we can be very creative with that, but we establish some sort of leadership in geography, a subsegment. We like to see an EBITDA break-even kind of situation if that's possible. So that's where we come in, So we and a few others, and the idea is that our money doesn't go into a lot of burn. It goes into expanding the business. So for example, we have a sauce company called Adinath Agro. We invested in it along with Uday Kotak's family office. It does sauces. It makes 50% what you call Jain sauces. It's the largest selling sauce in Maharashtra, Goa, and parts of Karnataka. So that's a company, for example, that we've invested in. It was 45 crores when we invested. It is about 90, 100 crores in revenues. Done reasonably well. So we are not necessarily chasing very, very high growth. We are looking at situations where we can have a sustainable growth. We have more modest expectation in terms of the amount of growth we need to see. But what we like is the more sustainable growth characteristic. So these are to us consumer. I would call them early private equity consumer investors. So these are three broad categories to me: consumer venture, impact, and consumer early private equity.
Sure, great. Thank you so much. So we've got first round of introductions as well as the inputs, and we're already at 52 minutes. So maybe I'd probably want this session to be treated as an icebreaker. So hopefully most of you are on the WhatsApp group that ASO has made for this purpose, and you can try and pick up independent conversation with several of us, any of us that you feel is relevant. Meanwhile, Kunal, do you want to have something specific to the brands that would look to it, sales distribution? Do you think it'd be easy for you to connect across your organization for some of these ramp-up conversations to happen?
Yeah, absolutely. Once I also had mentioned about today's meeting, and I had discussed this internally, and I obviously didn't know the entire range of the exciting stuff that is happening, but yeah, we are quite open to it, quite happy. I think everybody is doing some fantastic work, so we'll be quite happy to take that conversation forward. Yeah.
Great. Kunal, since you've built a brand, distributed, also raised money, I would love to know from you if utilizing services like PT Group would end up increasing or worsening your chances of getting investor attention, because there is a certain amount of learning curve that goes into building sales. And if you
for sure, we tried doing it. So in our distribution journey, after we realized that it works, but it needs to always be riding essentially a route truck which has several other brands. So our second phase of distribution was when we actually got to wit with some smartness, apart from, like I said, entrepreneurial vanity early on, which led to a burst in distribution. But after that, we figured this connection, and so we partnered with Nissin, for example, to figure pan-India distribution. So sort of similar to what Abhishek said, like there is a complementarity question, like what kind of outlets do you want to get to, etc. My broad advice would be that if distribution is seeming like the issue which is holding the brand back in these days, then the problem is elsewhere. Because there are ways like the whole online story and such, where even before sort of launching a product, you can try out things, and so even after, when you have launched a product, if you aren't seeing the right metrics from the demand side, so solving a demand problem is the first thing. Distribution can be handled. So something like Pity, which I just figured from Kunal's introduction, it sounds a very exciting idea for like anybody who wants to go to market, but you get to that only when you're trying to scale it up. So your demand thesis is the big question in this. For all of us trying to build a consumer brand, distribution is not the answer. Like the answer is elsewhere. Distribution is a problem you can solve relatively easily. Even if you don't have the background for it, you can figure out the people, you can figure out tie-ups like the Pity Group, you can figure out other brands which have distribution, which want more, like who are trying to optimize costs. So there are various ways, but solving the demand question first before going into distribution, that has been my big learning. That's where we wasted a lot of capital.
So to speak, hacks, I mean, basis your learning, if there's a way to speed up, because for instance, if somebody does find a pity to distribute them in a new geography, but they still need to solve for consumer demand in that area.
So
I don't know if
So I'm
retail
sure
point of sale is the answer or
Pity will want to know what is your thesis on the demand side. Like, I mean, so if
Sure.
one of us goes to Kunal and says, "Hey, here's a product we want to distribute," I'm sure in their due diligence they'll say, "Show us how it works, where it works, and okay, now we can help you scale up." They wouldn't want to take something where demand has to be created by distribution itself. So, I mean, that's my understanding. That would be
So how do you play this as a young brand which is probably done Bombay, has some degree of offtake, and now you want to do Delhi, you want to do Bangalore, but then you have no idea how to drive offtake in those markets. Just putting the product on the shelf may not be enough. So would you spend on below the line marketing? Would you spend on digital? Would you try and get to TV quickly? What is the demand thesis? How do you generate demand?
So I think, yeah, digital is obviously, and also category specific. So I was going to ignore that caveat, like it goes almost without saying. But the thing is, you need to have some story, right? Like, so digital is probably a way where you can tell a story, people are relating to your brand, picking it up, or your product is so disruptive, like say this Jan sauce thing, like certain people, it's just a market gap which someone has gotten into. So there has to be an answer for demand, something like that in your macro story. So either it's a brand story or it's a product story. So broadly, my point is that whatever worked for you in Bombay as an offtake thesis is where your answer will be. To go to Delhi, to just continue with Temple. So if your Bombay thesis was that this is how I'm telling my story, this is the mix of digital and whatever, then when they go to say, let's say Pity, they'll say, oh, this is what we were doing earlier in Bombay and we'll do here, and then Pity will say, okay, yeah, if it worked in Bombay, it will work in Delhi broadly, so or in Bangalore. So I think that in terms of the first doing of it is the painful burning of capital, and that's where your answers are, which you can take to scaling up. Obviously, all of this is helped if you are sitting with some money on your balance sheet. So generally, there are two schools of thought there, that I'll get to some place and then raise money. My advice generally to people is that if you have access to capital at any stage, bank it, because you'll need it, because you are going through iterations. For your first idea won't probably work. You have enough things. So, but that's like bank it. Yeah.
Okay, is it just me or is Suhas frozen for everyone, or am I frozen?
For everyone.
Okay,
I
so
can
it's
hear
about
you.
5
Can
o'clock.
You hear me?
Any specific questions anybody has? I can hear you now. So I was just saying that given that we have last space for a couple of questions, any specific questions for any of the counselors or the other entrepreneurs? Now is the time. Thank you. Anyone? Any of the entrepreneurs have specific questions? We couldn't spend a lot of time on the online side, but sure, go ahead.
Yeah, so I had a question related to the international market. So at Satviko, currently we are focusing on the exports basically now, targeting the Indians and the people who live abroad, in the Indians who have been living abroad. Those are the low hanging fruits. But I wanted to get some inputs, if somebody can share, how best effectively can you tap into those to the distributors and the importers who exist in the market. So
Is this question addressed to somebody specific?
Probably, I don't know who has ventured into the export market right now. Probably if Kunal has done it, because we are also new into the market. It's been 6-7 months, but if somebody can help me out here, so how to catch hold of
Kunal.
So no, I think
else has a specific answer on
I think you're already talking. But again, I'll connect. We'll connect offline. Suddenly struck me that I know someone, at least in the US, who has also started a eatable product. Okay, I think it's makhana only, and she's a dear friend. So maybe she can throw some light. And from what I see on her pages, she's doing pretty well for herself. So let's see if if I'm able to connect with her, and then maybe connect you to her. So let's see how that goes.
So the quick one.
We can take some input from Anuj also. Anuj, if you're there,
Yeah, I'm here.
Hi.
Yeah. So if you can address this particular question from Arihant, that'll be great.
Arihant, I'll tell you what I've learned. And the first thing is that don't underestimate the Indian market. It's a huge market, depending on your product. Oftentimes, the value of exports, in our minds, is you may feel a sense of achievement that you're starting exporting to 5 countries, but the economics don't always work out. So take a very close look at the product that you have and see what is the retail price that you'll actually get in the export markets. Even in Western markets, some products pretty much sell at a very slight premium to what you will get in India. And if you just look at the numbers, so obviously I don't want to dwell on that too much, but you need to do that math, I think. What we did was, and we are by no means an established exporter. Let me clarify that at the start. I live in London, so for me it's been a little easy. I do a lot of road shows here for several products, not just food but otherwise. And we did that to refine the product. We wanted to sort of get as much wide feedback on our products as possible. But that's an expensive thing to do. It's just that I happen to have infrastructure here. I've got people here in London, so it was slightly easy for me. But otherwise, it could be a bit expensive to do that. There are competitions, like the Latin America export I briefly mentioned was a buyer from Latin America had come to India and they were trying out different products. So we managed to secure that, one win. So maybe there's competitions you can look at, and I would take a very, very close look at which markets you're looking at and the real product market fit. Because each country is an India in itself. So, the amount of effort you're putting in India to market your product, you have to do it in each of the export markets, especially if you're establishing yourself as a brand. So I would take a really close look at those things. That's it.
Sure, thanks.
Thanks, Anuj. So there's a quick piece from mine in terms of introduction, since I'm the only one who's probably not introduced himself. So I've been an e-commerce guy, then went to the offline FMCG market. Now I'm back to a combination of food and e-commerce. So I'm doing something which is a B2B e-commerce play in hospitality industry. But more interestingly, right now, for most of you or some of you who are looking at distribution reach in Mumbai specifically, I'm happy to be assistance because I'm kind of pretty closely involved with a couple of distribution houses, which can cover to the tune of about 5,000 to 6,000 outlets across Mumbai. So that's on part one. And secondly, also in terms of let's say understanding some of these other players like Pity, because there are now smaller companies which are geography focused. Somebody like Elastic Run has a bunch of states. Somebody like Rippler does a couple of cities. Somebody like a Sankos Networks does a city. So there are several such companies which are looking at sales and distribution in specific cities or specific states. Even Udaan is open to engaging with brands. So like Suhas said, that if you've got your demand thesis and offtake part sorted, there are some of these strategic alignments you can make which can help you with offline geographic distribution comparatively faster than what you would build on your own. So on that note, from my end, the conversation is complete. Happy to be of assistance to anybody who wants help in Bombay. So please ping me individually. We're pretty much on time at 5:04. So if there are more questions for the audience, please let's take them, or else you can ping offline and do this individually.
Yeah, please feel free to ask any question. Of course, we'll not be able to answer most of them, but at least we get the ball rolling. And so please feel free. Yeah, I have also some news to share. So, but first I'll just give the chance to someone who wants to ask any questions.
Okay, no questions.
Okay, so yeah, just a bit of news then. So I've been talking to around 100 odd companies so far in the past 3-4 months, and so there's a lot of linkages which are possible, which since I'm talking to everyone I know, unfortunately I'm not able to communicate to everyone. So this conclave is just one part of getting the people to know each other and what resources are available and all. In that context, I want to tell you about one company. That company is based in Dubai. It's called, pronounced as Radius, spelled as RADYES. I think 2010 batch, Mani Prakash. I think that's yeah. So that particular company also would be able to help a lot of the companies which are in this particular food sector. And that is just one company. There are very many, quite a bit of companies who can help you, especially in reaching out to customers also, and also to help out to give that counseling and whatever is required. There's a whole bunch of consultants which are available in the IMC alumni stable also. So having said that, Ankur, you want to close with any remark or something, or maybe we can ask.
I think it's a great icebreaker. It's a great starting point.
Yeah,
it's a great starting point, I would imagine, and we could evolve the formats in terms of maybe having a specific session on distribution by Suhas, maybe by Kunal, as to how they specifically look at the subject. And that could actually invite a broader set of people in the FMCG or food space who are looking at distribution as a subject. So yeah, we'll evolve the formats, and it's a great initiative. Thanks to Asu. He's really energized the whole alumni segment. So yeah, thank you so much for that, Asu. That's cheers to you.
Yeah, well done, Asu. All right.
Thank you. And if it's okay with Ramu sir, would you like to say some word? Is there? Or I think he's dropped out.
He seems to have dropped off.
Okay. Would have loved to hear.
So yeah, let's just say cheers to some coffee and try and ping him to see if there's any quick ways, because he's doing something in the agri space and he could look at offline distribution in Bombay. So I'm happy to help.
Yeah. Thank you then.
Super.
Yeah.
Thank you so much,
everyone. All right. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Asu and Ankur.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye-bye.